Big addition.
What's up, you guys? TechChucker here, and I've got a review for you of the Neca Alien vs. Predator Arcade Hunter Predator. Now, this thing is pretty cool. I wasn't actually planning on getting them, but when I went to Target, there they were, so I had to go ahead and grab all of them. So let's not waste any more time. Let's go ahead and crack this thing open and take a closer look. So the articulation on this is pretty good. I mean, it's all there, but there's a few things that I don't really care for. So his head is on a double ball peg, and he can only look up about this far, which is a little bit disappointing. He can look down a decent amount. That's actually pretty good. And looking straight on, that's, you know, that looks pretty good the way that they've got that. He does have good side-to-side motion. There's no issues with that. And then there's actually a pretty good amount of tilt in there. So overall, the head is articulated fairly well. Moving into the shoulders, he's got a standard ball hinge, and he's able to get his arm up and out that much. Now, this little armor piece is going to kind of bind and get in the way a little bit, but you can kind of adjust it a little bit to stay out of the way. He does have an upper bicep swivel, but again, you're going to have to deal with that shoulder piece moving around. I almost feel like had they attached this to the shoulder and made it float over the arm, that would have been better. Moving down to the elbow, he's got double jointed elbows. Those work really, really well. And then the wrist gauntlet, that does swivel. And then he has a peg and hinge in his wrist. Moving down into the torso. So the upper torso piece, I believe, is a double ball peg. And he really kind of is limited in his range of motion, crunching forward and backwards. You're not getting a whole lot out of that. And I've tried kind of, you know, adjusting it as much as I can to get a little bit more. I just couldn't. And then he does have, you know, some decent side to side. That's actually pretty good. I'm really pleased with that. And then he does swivel from side to side. Also, moving down into the actual waist, that also is, I believe, a double ball peg. And crunching that one forward, there's almost nothing. Backwards is not much. There's just a tiny bit of wobble. I'll just call it wobble. So I'm a little disappointed with that. It does swivel, so that's okay. But moving down into the hips is where I'm kind of the most disappointed, and it's mostly with the, it's not so much with the articulation as it is in the sculpt, but we'll just do the articulation first. They're very loose, first off, and then he does have a good range for the splits. I mean, you can see he can pretty much do the entire splits, which is pretty good. He also is able to kick forward quite a bit. I mean, over 90 degrees, which is usually something that we always want. And he's able to kick back a lot. The one thing is, and this is pretty common in a lot of these Predator figures, is that the legs are basically connected. So as you move the one, both of them move. Now, they can move independently of each other. And I mean, look at this. You can get them to do some gymnastic moves there. But it's loose, and there's a lot of gap. I mean, there's a lot of space between. We'll see if we can get some light so that you can actually see. But there's a lot of space, and I'm not a huge fan of that. There is an upper thigh swivel. That works okay. Double jointed knees, those work pretty decent. Actually, I'll say they work really good. So that's good. There is no shin cut that I can tell. Yeah, no shin cut. And then we've got that weird ball peg deal in the ankle that I'm not a huge fan of. He can get his foot back this far, and he can get his foot forward this much, which is pretty limited. It does swivel if you need it to swivel, and then there is a little bit of, I mean, the rocker is actually pretty decent. It's just the forward and back that I'm not pleased with at all, but you know, it is what it is. Overall, the articulation is all there. It's just there's some things that I don't really care for about it. So the paint and sculpt work on this figure, I like the paint way more than I like the sculpt. There's definitely some really, really high points on the sculpt, but the paint is what I really, really like about this. And it's fairly subtle in what they've done to try and make this look like a video game color scheme. But the face sculpt is probably the best out of the entire figure. And I really like the way that this looks. Now mine has a little bit of a white piece on there. There must have been a little chunk of plastic, and then that got kind of popped off. So I've got that, which is kind of annoying, but the dreadlocks are painted very, very nicely. There's a little bit of paint variation, which is really cool. A lot of paint variation in all of his armor and whatnot, which is really, really cool. I believe some of these arm pieces and the torso and whatnot are all pretty much reused. The one thing I don't like is I would have liked to have seen this webbing mesh stuff painted. Now, having not played the video game, I don't know exactly what these characters actually looked like. It is nice that these are sculpted in, but it feels like those should have had a little bit of paint on them. But moving down into the hips, this is really where I have my biggest issue, is the amount of gapping. And it's nice that it is covered by this piece a little bit, but it still is, you know, kind of, I don't know, it's just a little unseemly looking. And then coming to the back, this might be accurate, but I don't know. I don't like that. I just don't like having a thong figure. It's not my cup of tea. So, I mean, it is what it is. If it's accurate, it's accurate. But I don't know. I don't care for it. But I do like that a lot of these pieces are soft. That is always good. This communicator deal opens on this side rather than, and I think that might mean that this is on the wrong. I don't know. I don't know why it would open this way. So that seems like it might be a mistake. Like it was supposed to be over here, but he's supposed to have his wrist blades on this side anyway. So I don't know why the hinge is on this side. That doesn't make sense. Feels like that's wrong. How would you do that? Why would you do that? But you know, it is what it is. I like the paint. I think they did a really nice job. There's some really nice shading right here in his abs. You can see the dark there. This harness is sculpted on and glued on, which is kind of nice. It is hard up here on the top. I mean, this one's kind of soft. I already noted it would have been nice if this was actually attached to the top of the shoulder so that when he moves, this would have stayed put. But, you know, it is what it is. Overall, I mean, the sculpt and paintwork is good enough. It just could have been a little bit better. All right, so let's take a look and see just how tall this guy is. And he's coming in at, oops, we've got centimeters. He is coming in at roughly about 8¼ inches tall, which is a pretty good size. Let's do a quick size comparison. We'll throw in the Fugitive Predator next to him. And they're pretty close to the same height. The Fugitive is slightly taller, which is, you know, not an issue whatsoever. Let's move these a little bit and we'll bring in our Marvel Legends Deadpool. That way then you can get a really good size comparison there. And you can see Deadpool is considerably smaller than our Predator figures, which is, you know, not a big deal. It's actually what I would expect. NECA gave us a fairly decent amount of accessories for this Hunter Predator figure, and I'm actually pretty pleased with them for the most part. The coolest part is this double-bladed spear that he's got, which is really cool. I like the paintwork to make it look like it's from a video game, which is super, super cool. It's relatively flexible, so, you know, you're not going to break it or anything. Let's go ahead and just see how long this guy is, because it's actually a really, really long spear. I mean, this is getting in towards about 9 inches exactly. That's a really, really long spear, which is really cool. Moving on, he's got his smart disc, which we'll see if you can actually see some of the detail work on this thing. But this is really nice. It's a really cool, pretty simple device, but obviously for a Predator figure, this is almost always a must-have. And then he also comes with this rifle. I assume that it's like a laser blaster of some sort. We'll talk about this in a moment, about the problem with this. There's technically no problem with the rifle. It's the fact that he really can't hold it very well. And then he's got his shoulder cannon, which obviously for a Predator figure, gotta have it. The one issue that I have It's definitely not the paint. I like the paint. I love this hose. I believe we've seen most of this mold before. It's really in the articulation of this, and you're not likely to be able to see it, but this is, number one, this piece of plastic is a different color. It didn't get any paint on it, but the way that this is attached, it's a hinge, and it is so small and delicate that when I went to heat up to be able to move this just got so floppy that it comes off, and then it's hard to get it back on. So I would have liked to have seen something a little bit different in how they executed the articulation on this, but it's still really cool, and we're going to go ahead and take a look at this on the figure now. All right, so basically to get this shoulder cannon on, they actually have an added piece here to his armor, which I actually like this a lot. I like this design a little bit better than when it's just on their shoulder and not quite so big, because it's easier to get on. Basically this it's kind of a tab that goes up and in, and then you just slide this so that it snaps in and you're good to go. Now, because the ball joint at the top of this, the actual cannon, is still fused on mine, I could not get it to release. Basically, the only way that he's going to use this is he's going to have to shoot himself in the head, which I'm going to guess is not super desirable and not really the intention. Anyway, okay, moving on. So his smart disc, he has the ability to hold it in here. Now, the only way that I've been able to get it to go in is by putting it with the unpainted surface out. Because of the way that it is shaped, I've not been able to get it to go in this way because it's kind of rounded on the outside here. So basically I've had to slide it in this way, but it's still nice. It would have been nice if there was more paint then on this, since that's going to be pointing out. If you see that I'm doing it wrong, let me know in the comments below. And then his spear, we're getting into the realm of where I have a slight problem with what Neca did with this, and it's the hands. It's difficult because he's really got this hand closed a lot. We've seen this hand sculpt before. They've reused it a lot. This one is clearly for holding the smart disc, so you know it's good to have this. Get this thing. Well, actually, maybe it's not shaped. Is it not even shaped to be able to hold it? I mean, barely. Yeah, I'm disappointed in the hands. I don't like the hands that they gave us, which again is problematic for the gun because he doesn't have a trigger finger. It just doesn't really work. I mean, you can kind of force it in there, but I'm not pleased with that at all. The execution of that is just not very well done. I do like the wrist blades. Those are nice. They're nice and tight. They go in and out well. So I'm happy with that. I'm just a little bit disappointed in the overall execution of the accessories and how he holds them. But is this figure worth buying? Is it worth the $27? I'm going to say kind of, but not really. You know, with the issues with the hips, with the weird, you know, thong, which I'm not a huge fan of, and then him having some difficulty with holding his weapons that he was given, I'm not really pleased with this one. So let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this figure? Am I wrong? Is this one of the best figures that Neca has come out with? It's a little underwhelming to me. So let me know in the comments below. Make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. And until next time, I'll see you later.